Hey YouTube, this is the Harbor Freight full-size 12-inch capacity lathe. I've brought the headstock into the room in here indoors to do the modifications and the upgrade on it. I've been seeing along the internet that I could get some more power and a little bit greater speed range, and then also be able to have a reverse if I got one of these treadmill motors and mounted it to the lathe. And while that seems straightforward, it was not straightforward, at least to me. And so I wanted to walk you through some of the things that I encountered while I was trying to make this work. So let's get started here. We'll start from left to right, and I'll show you the different things that I did. So first off, no modifications here, no modifications to the bearing. That was all fine. First thing is these 3 bolts here. One of them was to keep the slack on the power cord that went to the let's see, I can point to it here. This hole and this hole were the mounting holes for screws that worked for the the old motor there. That's where it was mounted. Okay, and so these holes, my first thought was, hey, we can use these holes, well, to mount the new motor. Well, first off, when I pulled this thing into the room here, there was dust and wood and everything, just wood dust all over it, sawdust inside of, caked along the inside up here, and just all over the place. It really seemed like whatever coverings or whatever casing you put it in, that the wood dust is just going to get all over it. And so what I found was things that were kind of out this direction didn't have as much, but things inside did. And so I'm kind of hesitant to mount the motor the other way, which is kind of, if I was to use these holes here, that would make the mounting job easier. And I've seen other videos where the mounting job is really easy. They just cut the treadmill loose. This mounting bracket here is already attached to a pole, kind of a square tube, and they attach the square tube, right here, or some variation of that. And I thought about that, and I thought that didn't make sense to me, because I want all the electronics to not have sawdust in them, and it seems like a fire hazard to me to have a bunch of fine particles blowing inside of this gap here. So I chose to turn the motor around with the intent that maybe I can put a case over it and kind of keep it back further away from the wood turning activity. I don't know if that'll be successful or not, but we will see. So anyways, those are those 3 holes there. Moving to the left, or right, I'm sorry, left to right, we have the treadmill motor, obviously in the flywheel here. And this motor, this is upside down. Hopefully I can remember. It's a clockwise rotation, 18 amps. It was from a Proform treadmill. This Icon Health group makes a bunch of these motors. It's 2.5 horsepower, 1.5 horsepower continuous duty, 95 volts DC. It's a permanent magnet motor. Max RPM is 6,700. If I had a wood turning piece spinning at 6,700, I'd be scared for my safety. So I'd want to step that down, and that's what I did. So these are the pulleys, and if you notice, the pulleys are different. than what came with the Harbor Freight lathe. The Reeves drive and the pot metal devices and pulleys and things were removed out of there. I had a lot of trouble with that. You can see the rod here, the motor shaft is damaged because I could not get that pot metal and then the little Reeves drive device. I could not get that off of this shaft. So I had to pound and hammer and pry to get it off of there. To the best of my knowledge, the shaft is not warped or bent from that activity, but the surface is scraped up, which didn't seem to matter for me the way I did this, but it might matter to you if you were doing something different. So just be aware of that. I don't know if you could heat it up before removing it or anything like that. Maybe there's some other options there that I wasn't aware of. But anyways, to the pulleys here, we have a 1 inch inner diameter and it's a 2.75 inch outer diameter. As you can see, the original belt is there, which I'll probably end up replacing that because it doesn't quite fit. But the pulley is there and it's working. One of the things I had to do, as I've seen on other places on the internet, is this flywheel, whatever this nub or shaft-ish kind of thing here, I had to grind that down so that it fit inside of the inner diameter for this pulley. There is no keyway, which I guess I'll see if that's going to cause a problem for me or not, but there is a huge set screw on the other side of this that came with the pulley. These pulleys are TBW, got them off of Amazon. There was a kind of a selector wizard thing that you could use to select your size. That was really helpful. So that is the thing there. So this is the pulley up against the flywheel. You see that there's some space there. So that worked out. The other thing from my research that I noticed was people were saying take the flywheel off. You know, it's just a pain. You don't need it. You don't need the torque. You don't need it to be. You don't need the speed to be stable. It's just a different usage for this besides the treadmill. You know, it's not used in a treadmill context. It's used in a lathe context, which is a little different. So, you know, yeah, that's cool. But then I read other places that this is a fan back here. So these blades, as they spin, they are a fan, and that fan is helping to keep this motor cool. So I felt like I needed to keep the flywheel on there, and so that's why I modified the flywheel and put the pulley on there and had to manually fit it, as opposed to just using the shaft that the flywheel and the pulley together are mounted onto. That shaft was 3/8. It would have been a standard pulley size, pretty much effortless, but I valued the fan that was supposed to keep the motor cool. And it does. When it spins high, that thing is blowing all over the place. So it does seem to be doing something. So that was my thinking there. Going up into the motor, or into the lathe housing here, I got a 4.25 inch outer diameter pulley from Amazon. The same company, TBW, did that. Unfortunately, the shaft I found out was 24 millimeters, and I had a short time to work on this, so I didn't want to. It seemed to be more difficult to order metric inner diameter pulleys. It was just not as easy and not as quick as the US standard units. So I could get a 1 inch pulley in one day. A 24 millimeter inner diameter pulley, that was not as easy to get. So I ended up getting an inch pulley, inner diameter. if you can go back to junior high, you'll remember that there's 2.54 centimeters per inch, so there's 25.4 millimeters per inch. So that means that the pulley is oversized by 1.4 millimeters. And as I was doing this, I thought, oh, that's no big deal. I'll go ahead and order it. I can just slide that on there and it won't even be noticeable. And I was so wrong. It was very noticeable. It would not engage with the key at all. It just slid right off. It rattled and made a bunch of noise. And that was not a good thing. So what I did for that is I ended up shimming the diameter of the shaft, making it larger to accommodate the 1-inch inner diameter on the pulley. Something that's kind of humorous to me is I shimmed it with a Monster Energy drink thing, because that's what I had just finished my Monster Energy drink when I had this idea, so I cut it up into strips and put it in there, so now the Monster Energy drink is forever embedded in the lathe there. In addition, you can see the set screw, and I have a small amount of engagement with the key because the keyway on these pulleys are oversized. The keyway is engaging, so it is working okay. We'll see, long term with the wood turning to see if I really need that key or if the set screw and the shimming is enough. I'll have to come back to it later though. Alright, and then my engine mounting strategy was a little different than some that I've seen. It did utilize the treadmill parts, but it didn't use them the same way that other people were using them. I got a grinder and I got some of the stronger feeling square tubing, and I cut out the back so that it was accessible for hardware and wrenches and things to get back there. I ground it all down so that I didn't cut myself on it, and I made this little mounting, I don't know, whatever that is there. But this little arm here is what holds the treadmill bracket that mounted the motor when it was inside the treadmill. So if you see, this here is attached to the motor, like welded or whatever right there. This is the bracket that came inside the treadmill that I've ground down so that there's not as much weight and it's just kind of stuffs out of the way so I can access it with the wrenches and things. That bolt there is original, so that's kind of the strategy that I followed there. This is probably not going to work. I still need to come back. Let's see if I can get that to focus up a little bit better. But this is not going to work. There's 2 screws down there that I made holes in the body of the lathe housing, or the shell of the lathe housing. I put those bolts in there. I just don't know. It doesn't seem like it's strong enough. The reason, and I actually think that this mounting arm here isn't strong enough. It's not rigid enough, and I'll show you when I turn on the lathe that it's just not quite enough, and it makes me nervous to really take the engine up to high speed because there's some wobbling that starts to happen, and that makes me feel like maybe it's unsafe and that this bar here maybe needs to be replaced with something more rigid. If you notice, this material right here is pretty thick. This material right here is pretty thin. If I had material that was this thick, if I had a square tube like from the big box stores or something, I could get a square tube that was this thickness. Maybe that would be strong enough, and I could plan to make some more holes down here. But we'll see. So let me turn it on here. It's already up to speed. I'm just going to flip the switch and you'll see it. If you notice it's vibrating, that's the wobbling I'm talking about. That's the thing that I'm not sure is if it's safe. What you see here with the shims, that seems to be working out okay. The original belt seems to be working out okay for now. It is spinning backwards again. It's you know, there's a key that I need to carve in here on the front. If I turn it counterclockwise, the flywheel will spin off. So I've got it spinning clockwise for now, with the modification coming here soon to add the key so that I can spin it both directions. So this is the Harbor Freight lathe upgrade that I've done so far. Just for transparency, I have not wood turned on this yet. It is still in progress. I plan to replace that metal arm that you saw here. This piece that was from the Treadmill, I need to replace that with something more substantial and a little bit thicker gauge. I still need to add the key so it can spin both directions. And I still need to put all of the electronics inside a box and protect them from wood dust and things too. But there's enough progress here to kind of give you an update and show you my version of all of the combined videos and attempts that are out there. So hopefully this helped you. Please leave a comment or any kind of question that you have, and I'll try to get back to you on it. You can probably see from the list of my videos that this is one of my first videos, so I'm not sure how all of it works yet, but I'll get back to you as quick as I can. Thank you for watching.